title by Doris Salcedo. Rows of metal bed frames and stacks of folded white shirts create an atmosphere evocative of a hospice or a hospital. The bed frames are wrapped in animal skin as though in wound dressing material, some with tightly rolled shirts bandaged onto them. The stacked shirts are stiffened with plaster and speared through at breast level by long metal rods, a symbolic gesture of violence exerted against the absent human bodies. The starting point for Doris Salcedo's striking sculptural ensembles was her research into a massacre of plantation workers in Colombia. Usually, pieces of clothing and the traces they bear constitute important evidence when investigating crimes. Here, however, they are stripped of their individuality, made uniform, anonymous, and interchangeable. Read as such, the lined-up stacks of varying heads recall the affectless official recording of a dead count. A fleur de piel. Petal upon petal, a fleur de piel spreads out in soft waves across the floor, miniaturely sewn together by hand using surgical thread and chemically preserved. The petals of thousands of roses appear to hover in a state between life and death. They are so fragile that they risk tearing at the merest touch, an image of the frailty of human existence. The title of the work goes back to a Spanish expression used to describe the reaction to an emotionally overwhelming situation, which in English would approximately translate to on edge raw. Formally and chromatically, the work brings to mind the association of human skin or even flesh, the act of stitching embodied in the piece, a gesture both carrying hurtful, triggers ambivalent feelings. Plegaria muda. This room-filling installation raises the ground up into our field of vision. Grass is sprouting from the layers of earth spread between the diversely staked pairs of table. The measurements of the plain, handmade pieces of furniture echo those of a human body. The table's materials and their uniformity calls to mind coffins, tied up as in a burial ground. Plegaria muda, which translates as a silent player, is rooted in Doris Salcedo's engagement with the fate of young victims of deadly violence in the context of both gang crime in Los Angeles and a series of murders carried out by the Colombian army against supposed guerrilla fighters. The work mentions no names, hauntingly echoing the anonymity of mass graves, yet the vibrant green of the grass operates as a hopeful reminder that new life can spring up even in the most gruesome places. atrabiliarios. Empty boxes made from translucent parchment-like material are stacked on the gallery floor. A series of niches have been embedded in the walls, their openings covered with a stretched animal skin that blurs their contents. Shoes presented either single or in pairs. The shoe stands in for the human body, operating as a trace of the person whose foot once shaped it. As an isolated item, it symbolizes loss, its own or that of its owner. The title of the series, Atrabiliarios, derives from the Latin atrabilis, used to describe the melancholy associated with mourning. Over a number of years, Doris Salcedo gathered the shoes belonging for disappeared persons. Even though their personal stories remain undisclosed, the reliquary-like display emphasizes the special significance of the individual. The protective membrane stitched to the wall with surgical thread elicits contradictory association. The caring act of tending to a wound also amounts to a violent aggression of the skin. The object protection doubles as its concealment. This gathering of furniture uncannily deconstructs familiar environments. Wardrobes and beds, tables and chairs are ripped from their usual constellations and thrown into new combinations that render them impossible to use. Partly showed into one another, their cavities filled with concrete. Some of them contain items of clothing once worn and kept there, but now forever still petrified. They offer only vague memories of the individuals who will never again sit on those chairs and sleep in those beds, and whose absence this work make tangible. The installation's disquieting effect is heightened by the fact that the objects are no longer in relation to the dimensions of their former domestic environment. In the vast expanse of the gallery, they appear isolated and exposed. The traces of wear on the wooden surfaces are evocative of wrinkle and scars. They call to mind the wounded state of families broken apart, such as those Doris Salcedo met over the course of her research into political violence. This is remembered by Salcedo for almost transparent blouses of loosely woven silk thread hang on the walls. Depending on the viewer vantage point and the light's angle of incidence, the delicate material gains or loses in visibility. Closer examination reveals thousands of needles worked into the fabric. The impression of almost immaterial lightness thus fuses with an intuition of harrowing, unrelenting pain. This group of works expresses Doris Salcedo engagement with the grief and anguish of mothers in Chicago who have lost their only child to local gun violence. Reminded daily of their agonizing loss, they often experience incomprehension and impatience from a society longing for pleasure and oblivion. Emptiness dominates in the exhibition's largest room, palimpsest. Crossing the threshold, our gaze falls to the floor, which is covered in large rectangular stone slabs. Names are written on the slabs in dark sand. Overlapping with them, water wells up in drops to form letters that combine into further names before seeping away again. Although written in Latin script, the names attest to a rootedness in languages hailing from outside Europe. The work's title palimpsest refers to the practice of writing, erasing, and overwriting text on animal skin prior to the invention of paper. In this context, writing is a time-bound, transient endeavor, and yet the shadows of earlier words always remain visible. Palimpsest is dedicated to those who lost their lives fleeing across the sea in search of a better life in Europe. The installation allows for a commemoration and remembrance they would otherwise be denied because their lives do not count in Europe and their names are nowhere recorded. The artist has spent several years painstakingly researching these names and is bringing them to our awareness with this image of a weeping heart. Orphan's Tunic by Salcedo. As though orphaned, three long wooden tables stand in the otherwise empty space. Looking more closely, it becomes apparent that they are assembled from two different table halves partly slotted on top of each other. In Umland, the orphan's tunic, the shorter part, is clad in white silk that crosses over to the other part, where it is sewn to the wood with countless slitches of human hair. The impression thus created is that the upper table half is attempting to hold the bottom half. It is uncertain whether this connection could withstand an ordinary load. The subtitle, The Orphan's Tunic, quotes from the English translation of a poem by Paul Celan, in which The garment materializes the emotional connection between the living and the dead. The sculpture is rooted in Doris Salcedo encounter with an orphaned child who had witnessed the murder of her parents during the Colombian Civil War, and had ever since worn the same white gown sewn by her mother.